Hello Minders, welcome to another Mindshot vlog. Well, we decided to head up to North Carolina and catch some of the fall colors, and we wanted to do a little plein air painting at our favorite place in the area, and that's Biltmore Estate. Unfortunately, a lot of the leaves had fallen up here. There were some hanging on still, and we got bits of color here and there. They're just coming into peak where I live, but up in Asheville they're starting to go. But we still found some of the beauties here and there. Just lovely colors. Love the way the sun backlights these things and just looks like stained glass. It was too cold to go outside, and too cold and windy, so we had kind of planned this trip ahead of time and not knowing what the weather would be. So I decided to do a little bit of sketching from the car, and I'm going to do some thumbnails. I divided the sketchbook into 4 thumbnails. That little area jutting out into the water there, that's what I'm painting. It's hard to see, but there was actually a little bright shock of reddish leaves. The only leaves hanging on to that section of the bank, and everything else around it was gray, so they really stood out. So I was going to do and am doing a thumbnail of that and the surrounding water and reflections and whatnot. I've done plein air. I guess I'm not really outside in the air, but I've done sketching from my car before. It's a great fallback if it rains, or if you just feel more comfortable in the location doing it from your car. It's done actually quite a bit by artists. Pentel Aquash, and I'm using my Sennelier palette. It's one of my most dependable, well-rounded palettes, and I love to use that. I just love the paints. It's honey based, similar to my favorite M. Graham. They re-wet extremely quickly. Rich, vibrant color. And this, other than this little micro palette that I made, this is my smallest, although that won't always be the case. I've got another credit card size palette that I'm going to be setting up soon. This is what I'm painting now. This video is not doing justice to the deep golds and red browns that were in that tree. But I just wanted to crop in on a section of that tree and do a little thumbnail of that one. It's a great way to quickly put down some ideas that might turn into bigger paintings. Many thanks to my wife, again, for doing a great job on the video. I was sitting in the passenger seat in the front, and there's not enough room behind the steering wheel, and she was actually in the back seat looking over. And when she wasn't videoing, she was sitting back there knitting. We were listening to the radio. Just enjoying the scenery. As you might guess, the purpose here is just to grab an impression, a very quick, loose impression. Get some colors in there, get the contrasts the way you see them, or the way you'd like to see them, and carry back some great souvenirs of a fun excursion. I'm using a Kilimanjaro sketchbook, and I'll show you that a little later. Here's the finished pieces. I have them in the shadow on purpose because that sunlight was biasing the color. I made those a little orange than they really were. Here's the sketchbook. Oh, there's a Cheap Joe's art stuff up in Asheville, and we stopped in there before we ended up at Biltmore, and this picked up this landscape orientation hardbound sketchbook. Well, it's hardback, spiral bound, but I love this. Nice warm color in the natural white paper, and it's a 100% cotton watercolor sketchbook. Now in this one, I'll show you the photo will be popping up in here in a minute. It was a bright yellow bush that was hanging out over the water, and it just made for some really great color contrast. The blue of the sky was heavily reflected in the water, so I wanted to grab that. You don't need anything necessarily spectacular to paint. Just look for sometimes small little scenes. I'm using a silver brush, Golden Natural. Been experimenting with these brushes a lot lately. I really like them. They have a lot of the same performance of sable, but they're not sable. It's a synthetic natural blend. And in case you couldn't tell, I'm back in the studio now. I only did the first two in the car on location. Took lots of photos and brought them back. And I'm doing these last two thumbnails in the studio. On to the last thumbnail now. This was a road, actually, a road that we drove down and parked at for a couple of these scenes. And I was real struck by the shadows that were falling across the road. A strong light coming from the left, sort of backlighting the one gold-colored tree, a tree with the golden leaves. And then a lot of leaves on the bank, and it was really a dirt road that you drive down, but I thought it could be painted to look kind of like a path. Again, just trying to get the impression here of the color and the contrast and the composition that I see. Really taking a lot of liberties with composition. You can do that with landscape. Probably should do that with landscape. I look at what I see, and most of it is too complex to paint as is. Just simplify, arrange things as you like them. Give yourself an impression of how that scene felt to you. And that's what I'm doing here. Real strong shadows falling across the road. Shadows cast by these trees, and practically the tree trunks were practically silhouetted against that strong light coming in over from the left. And that's pretty much it for these. This is the palette, or the colors on my palette, and it's a good idea to get them out and try them. Here you see the Sennelier palette. About 5 colors here that were mostly autumnal, and then that leaf green is also good. It's good for the transitional greens, where you'll still find a few. These are the kind of colors, that you're looking for in these mums. Great to recreate some of those. And I just play with the colors just to make sure I know what I'm going to use for the mixes. Here's a swatch of the palette. Look at this tree. I mean, just beautiful. See the transition from greens at the bottom to the deep red browns at the top and the bright golds in between. And I can pretty much mix those colors from what I have in this little limited palette. Here's another. Just look at the variety. The blood reds, the deep crimsons, to the coral colors and the leaf green. Get out your palette, see what colors you have for fall, try them out first, and go out and paint something. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.